Good evening. This is Peter McFarland. I'm calling the Community Preservation Committee meeting of November 18th, 2020, 5:30 p.m. Patrick, do you want to read the disclaimer and we'll get going?
Yeah, sure. There's no real disclaimer. I would just say, for all these remote meetings, votes are usually done as a roll call. When speaking, just trying not to speak over each other. And that's about it.
Okay, it's simple now, huh?
I've done it too many times.
First, order of business is approval of the minutes from October 14th. Do I have a motion?
I'll move.
Second. John, second. Patty? Okay. Any discussion? Patty, you froze, so I'm not sure.
Just a thank you to John for the meeting minutes.
Sorry, my computer keeps freezing. I don't know what's going on.
No. Did you have any comments, or you were just seconding minutes, right?
Yeah.
Any other discussions? That I'll do. Well, I probably should do a roll call vote with who's attending, right? I'm thinking, since we're here, we're here. As far as roll call and an approval of the minutes, you could state your name and yes or no. Patty?
Aye. Patty here.
Joe Sheehan?
Aye. Joe Sheehan here.
Ron Hall?
John Hall, aye.
Matt Lane?
Matt Lane, aye.
Tony Esco?
I here.
And Joe Grilli?
Aye and yes.
And chair votes unanimous, minutes are approved. And everybody's here. So second, as far as fall special town meeting, we didn't get anywhere with it. We're still where we are as of October 14th. So hopefully we'll get they'll set up a special town meeting in January. We'll be able to get our article approved that we've been waiting for. So as far as that goes, any questions or thoughts?
Yeah. It is what it is, right?
Right. Okay. So next is the applications for fiscal year 2020, the initial discussion. We have 5 new applications that we received. So as far as any thoughts, initial thoughts? I mean, as far as they all look like they're worthy of being funded by the community preservation. Now we just have to vet the applications and make sure that we get everything down as far as that goes. The only thing is, has this been perused by Kathy County? Any of these? Or are we waiting for?
No. So I think this is all kind of initial right now. And so I think I know the Trails Committee has met with the selectmen to discuss their 3 initial projects, as well as with the Conservation Commission. We had a meeting, the applicant for the fire bell, with myself, Bernie Cooper, and Tony Mizuko initially. And so that project is kind of still contingent upon getting the bell founder, Bell Smith, or whatever you want to call him, from Virginia, Ben Sunderland, up here to do an estimate and do a kind of review of the Carillon. And so that project and that price cost kind of are dependent on when he can get up to Massachusetts. And the signage, historical signage application was something I kind of put together at the end of the week, last week. I think I wrote in the pre-application that I did not meet the deadline and do not intend to force this as something to go through in the at the May annual. I think I kind of want to treat it more like the Saint Lot project, where some of the details are kind of contingent on a few things from happening, but I want to get on the radar now. Seeing that it kind of is also a project I want to align with the 150th anniversary. It didn't make sense to wait on it another year, so I kind of wanted to get the wheels going with that and just kind of get that on your radar. And that's kind of where that stands. I still, that project in particular, I still need a vet with a few different committees.
So you think that might be suspended eventually, or if you don't get
Yeah,
get through it?
Just speaking as the applicant for it, I mean, I think the situation with it is that I'd like to, not like to hold it to the same standard that we kind of put in place for the pre-application, and I don't intend to force it through or whatever for the May annual, but I'd like to have it be something that potentially is done for the fall special next year, as a worst case scenario. There's a few elements to that project that are kind of, depend on me meeting with the historical commission, with the 150th committee, obviously talking with town manager Mizuko and trying to do the background for that project, which is a lot more research and kind of cataloging. The actual implementation of it is probably not going to be as expensive as even what I priced it as. And I based it off a few projects that were done in Stoughton and Chatham in particular. And so that's kind of where I looked at what they did, which was a little bit more ornate in terms of signage than what I was envisioning. I was thinking more of something that is more of a design and branding, and then we hold the data and the background information elsewhere. And so I won't go into it right now because that's not the intention of what this is about right now. But
I'm glad you're not going into it.
yeah, I got to stop myself.
John Hall?
I'd like to ask that we go through each of the projects in order and get all the comments for each project together. I think that will be a little more satisfactory in terms of understanding what we're talking about. And if that's all right, I'd like to start with my comments on the Fire Bell project. Is that all right?
The floor is yours, John.
Okay.
The microphone.
I was confused by a lot of what was in this document. I'm not aware of there being a committee for the relocation and restoration of Washington Post 7's bell. And I think there needs to be some explanation of what that is, who created it, who John Grove is in respect to this. I'm not saying you can't do that, but in the final application, all of that sort of thing should be nailed down. Second thing is, it never says that I could find where the bell is supposed to be moved to. Is that part of the project? It should be clarified if that's part of the project, is to figure out where it could better be located. And the third comment I have is, you're going to need some early approvals from people who have jurisdiction over the space where the bell is now and the space that the bell's supposed to go. And the moving of things is big and delicate and sensitive as the bell. I assume there's probably more than one.
John, we're losing you.
Can't hear you, John.
Could everyone actually just put themselves on mute when not speaking? I think that might help with some of the background noise.
Okay.
Okay,
I'm not sure exactly when you lost me, but I think it
it
was
was
during,
like the last two sentences, John. It wasn't,
Oh.
just at the very end, you started breaking up.
I just think there needs to be more clarity about who has a stake in this and should be approving it at the application stage.
Okay, so noted. Anybody else on the Fire Bell?
No.
All righty. I guess, Haas Pool, the ADA walking path. I mean, it's trails, it's co-sponsored by us, 2 or 3 department, rec department, trails advisory committee, and Concom, right? So, as far as that goes, it's basically the 2 pools that are behind the natural pool. Well, they're not the natural pools. Originally, they were the gentleman's pool and the ladies' pool back in the day, behind Hawes, what's now Hawes Pool. So, Joe, anything you want to, since you're part of the,
I will see if I can answer, excuse me, I'll answer any questions or comments or field comments. I did include just a footnote on the project. I did include a comment on the application, the pre-application, that Tony Mazzucco had asked me if there was a project that we could propose that could be applied for, funds could be applied from what's called, I'm not sure, Pat, maybe you know for sure, but it's basically a rideshare grant that organizations like Uber and I think there's 2 other, Lyft and Uber, I think, are the main quote unquote drivers. But there is money available from an alternate source besides this CPA request. I know we're traveling in 2 different parallel paths to get this funded from one or the other. I tend to think that Uber application will come to fruition before the CPA cycle is completed. Obviously, we'll keep you posted on that. So there is a chance that, if any money is gained from that alternate source, then the request to the CPA funds will either be reduced or eliminated altogether.
Pat?
I was just going to say, to Joe's point, so that TNC fund, those TNC funds, I think they're about 20,000 that we received from calendar year 2019. Similar to the CPA project. So we have the funding from that right now, but we have to appropriate that by our legislative body in order to use it. So it's kind of like they would both happen at the same time. If we're thinking of the Haas ADA project, if it gets approved by the CPA and gets to town meeting at the annual, theoretically, it's like you would have to approve those TNC funds at the same time to use them. So say the project comes in at, I don't know, 30,000, maybe 20,000 we'll be able to get from the TNC funds, 10,000 would be from CPA funds. Just a hypothetical. So obviously that depends on the final scoped out price.
Yeah, but that's not a grant. That is a surcharge to Uber and Lyft rides that originate in Norwood.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. But we have
That's an annual money we've had it for the last 3 or 4 years. It was like 10,000. We did the bike stands at the schools, and it was something. What was it for this year? It was 20,000 this year. So that's money that's it's a surcharge that we get every year, because of that. And we're trying to get it to go up even higher. And I think it's 20 cents or 10 cents or 20 cents a ride that it originates.
It's 20 cents a ride, half goes to the state, half goes to the town.
Okay, then we're getting 10 cents on the ride. So it's like 2,000 rides or something that originated in, or some number, I don't know what the statistics are, but that's where that money comes from. So it's always going to be a pool of money that's going to come into the general fund. We can only use it for transportation issues. So, so walking, it's a utilization of it. So, it probably would, it's, unless we dedicated 2 years of funds from there, it would be 38,000, but, probably can do half and half. So probably 20,000 eventually from CPC and 20,000 from the Uber Lyft surcharge fund. So, okay. Any other question? Do you have a question on the walking path? John Hall?
Yes, I do. My questions are mostly connected with the expressions of participation by the three groups. Joe is the only one for Trails who signed it at the applicant line. Joe and Travis are the only ones who were identified for contact. Holly Jones is a new name for most people, I think, and I'm not sure that she's empowered to commit the Conservation Commission. So I think before there's a final application, it should include as an attachment a memo from the Conservation Commission saying that they've agreed to be one of the sponsors of this project. If they weren't listed as a sponsor, you could get by with a lighter form of approval. But since they are, and I think it's appropriate that they are, I think you've got to prove that they are rather than say that they are.
Yeah, John, if I could, Mr. Chair. I did preface the application with both Travis, well, Paul, pretty much anybody that I could get in touch with, Paul, Pat, Travis Farley from the Rec Department, Holly Jones is the new Conservation Commission conservation agent. I did discuss this, as I mentioned, with Tony, and I've actually walked the property with Mark Ryan. Pat, I think Pat, I'm not sure who's driving the ship here, but Pat has a map of the proposal up in front of us. And the reason the Conservation Commission is involved and the Rec Department is, if you look at the map in the roughly 11 o'clock corner, top left where it says Haas Brook, that area and further to the left around the horseshoe, basically, that land is under the management of the Conservation Commission. So that's why I approached them. We did get a letter of support actually on all three of these projects from the Conservation Commission. I also included in the shared folder that Pat has shared with us, there's also a letter of support from the Trails Commission for all three of these projects. And the remaining part of the project area, that's the letter Pat's got up on the screen from Holly as a representative and the conservation agent as a representative from the Conservation Commission. They did take a vote at, I believe, I don't see a date. Oh, there it is, October 21st. So the Conservation Commission voted unanimously on October 21st in support of these three projects. So they will have oversight. We will have to submit filings to them. The notice of intent, it's an NOI of the initials, but it's basically a filing with the Conservation Commission. They get full access, full approval rights to the project to make sure that we're in compliance with wetland protection and everything else. The front part of the project is under the auspices of the Rec Department and the Board of Selectmen in their role as Parks Commissioners. And I have sent all three of these projects to them. They are reviewing the projects, and I've requested a letter of support or a letter, basically one way or the other, from the Board of Selectmen. So Pat is displaying the cover letter that I sent to. I sent the letter to Christina and asked her to distribute it, and then I sent a cover letter to Bill and Christina.
Thanks, Joe. That answers most of my questions. The question that I still have has more to do with everybody signing on with their organizational and management responsibilities on the project. It's one thing to say that I'm fine with the project going forward. I support it and so forth. It's quite another thing to say, you said that I'm going to be overseeing this and arranging for that, and I'm okay with that too. And I think the Conservation Commission may have a large enough role that it would be good to get something that's connected to an organization task chart kind of layout in the final application.
Okay, all right, good. I'll make sure that happens. Thank you.
Tony?
Thank you. I just wanted to add to the conversation that there was in the packet of material that Patrick sent, a letter from Paul Halakiotis saying that he had reviewed all the community preservation projects for 2021, and he provided his comments. And just as a reminder, just for clarity for all of us, the Conservation Commission now in the organizational chart is really under the Planning Department and Economic Development. So if you can correct me, Pat, if I'm wrong, but if Paul Halakiotis has seen all those things, then the environmental planner / conservation agent has seen them too. So I guess I'm asking, I was a vocal non-supporter of this position, but this is one of those situations where I ask, whose real permission do you need for these Conservation Commission related project? Because the Conservation Commission is no longer an autonomous body. It is under the supervision of the Planning and Economic Development Department. So is it
One point of, so
Thank you,
we're technically, it's community development now is the department.
community development?
Department's
Okay.
Community development, compromising
Thank you.
zoning, planning, and conservation commission.
Okay, thank you, Patrick.
Yep.
So I just want to clarify in case there's any confusion about it, that the conservation, and Patrick, please correct me if I'm wrong,
Mhm.
but the Conservation Commission is no longer that separate autonomous body that it was a couple years ago in the organizational chart. It's under the community, what did you call it? Community
No,
planning?
so the conservation agent, Holly, works for the Conservation Commission in terms of following wetlands bylaws, in terms of conducting their meetings, in terms of organizational hierarchy. Paul would be her, I guess, manager in a way, in terms of when she's in the building and when she's working for us. So ultimately, yeah, Paul would need to be aware of these projects, but anything dealing with the conservation land, I mean, that Holly is your first step, and she's your primary go-to contact for that, for conservation property.
Okay, for clarification, please, then, in addition to Holly, would we need Paul Halakiotis?
On his permission?
Yeah,
Or,
yes,
not necessarily. I mean, it's under two different things. So
I know.
Holly, what's going on at the conservation land? The Conservation Commission needs to be made aware of. They're the body that, that's the land that, they are, whether they technically own it or not, or whether that's technically their jurisdiction, that's the Conservation Commission. I don't necessarily think you need Paul to sign off entirely on it.
What
But
if you disagreed?
well, there's multiple parties that can agree. I mean, ultimately, anything goes through you. If it's a CPA project, first step is, if it's on conservation land, it's the Conservation Commission, and Holly, and then it would go probably to Tony, and then the Board of Selectmen. So I'm failing to understand what the real issue is here with a conservation project that's on the open space and recreation plan. If it's all kind of falling under something where we're trying to incentivize or try to look into, I'm confused.
John Hall?
When I was in the private sector in research, there was a lot of very close attention placed on the legalities of who can legally commit the organization to do a piece of work. And there were not a lot of people who qualified as that. So I think Tony has put her finger on a very important point here. We need to make sure that this, not only the general support for the project, but the specific willingness to guarantee that the work will be done is signed off by those people who are the highest placed responsible for the parties involved. Now, my guess is that's probably Paul, Joe, and Travis, but all three need to sign because there are parts of the work that needs to be done that only one of the three, and it's often a different one of the three, is in a position to guarantee.
Are you talking about invoicing or
I'm talking about making sure that the tasks are performed that are laid out in the more complete description.
Yeah, I understand what everybody's saying. Make sure we have the right responsible party for it. I don't want to get in any deeper into this as far as, I mean, I consider Conservation Commission still an autonomous group the same way the CPC is.
yeah?
We have our own rules and bylaws that we have to adhere to, and there's still the responsibility of the committee.
And you,
I want to end this conversation right now because I don't think it's appropriate for us to get any deeper into this. We'll find out who's responsible for it and we'll get that answered as far as that goes. So, anything else on the walking path? Or other than that, we can go to University Ave trail study. Joe, I guess since all trails end to you here.
There you go. So very, very briefly, just to, and I should have done this with the Haas project, just provide a little bit of Reader's Digest version, but basically what we want to accomplish at University Ave, and obviously we're going to get into this same discussion for as far as the Conservation Commission is concerned. The University Ave project is a request to fund a feasibility study and an initial design of walking trails strictly on Conservation Commission property. The land is right, it's basically 2 lots adjacent to the Boston Skating Club, just for a logistical reference. There is a probably, I don't know how many acres, it might be like 12 to 15 acres, I'm just guessing, but there's a property over there basically that it's as virgin a forest as we get in Norwood. But the request is to and go no further than initial design and feasibility. That likewise, at that same meeting, October 21st, I went in front of the Conservation Commission, outlined the project. They are definitely they're definitely cautious on this, cautious on everything they do, but they're cautious on this because it's also further complicated because it's part of the Fowl Meadow area of critical environmental concern. They call it an ACEC. So the compliance requirements, not only, the buck doesn't stop only at the Conservation Commission, but we will have to get other entities involved in this as well. But ultimately, we are proposing the feasibility study of building a walking trail that could conceivably, I think I included a map, but it could conceivably span just slightly over a mile round trip. It's basically another horseshoe through the property. So
Joe, you're on mute still, Joe.
Where would it start? Would it be by the pump station or University Ave, or how would you want to access it?
The hot dog stand?
So if you go, right, hot dog stand. So if you travel about 2/3 of the way down University Ave towards Westwood Station, on the right-hand side, just beyond the Boston Skating Club on the right-hand side, there's a little cutout on the sidewalk and the guardrail. That's where anybody's familiar with that, during the season, there's actually a hot dog stand that parks in that little cutout. That's all this area is town-owned property, including that cutout. So the entrance and the entrance and parking would be in that little cutout area.
And it
How
goes,
many cars, how many cars could fit in there, or?
If I could, Mr. Chair, it's a fairly small area. It might be, I'd say 8 to 10 at the very most. Also on that property, there's a little bit of competition because there's also a gas line easement that travels adjacent to that area. So there would be obviously work that needs to be done in that to make sure we're in compliance with that that competing feature, I guess.
I mean, it starts from the hot dog stand, goes down towards Granger more than it is towards, it's going towards the Westwood line from there.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, the gas line actually goes underneath Route 1. It goes up past University Ave and Route 1 and down the opposite direction past Granger.
I thought it was over on the other side of the university, the north side of University Ave by the, where they're taking the gravel out. I've seen the Algonquin pipeline there.
Yep, there's actually
It does have oh, there's 2 lines? Okay.
there's one that is almost directly across from UPS at that Taylor Freezer, I think is the name of the business.
Yep.
So there's another portion of it right there.
Okay. So, Matt Lane?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Greeley, is this the same trail that you organized the hike for pre-COVID? I can't remember when it was.
And we actually, thank you. We actually had our New Year's Day first hike there January 1st, 2020.
Yeah.
On that, to prepare for that, we did petition the Conservation Commission for access and they approved. We also petitioned the Boston Skating Club and the private business in the office building right next door. It's Hilco, Hilco. We did ask both of them if we could provide, if they would allow us to park vehicles there, and both said, both approved and both were excited at the opportunity. So yes, we did.
That was going to be my next question was, I think when we did that, the skating club hadn't really undergone construction or wasn't finished yet. And so just wondering if that relationship is still good. It sounds like it is, because I think I remember we all parked somewhere there and they were good about it.
Right.
Yep.
We did, I was helping the Conservation Commission a couple of weeks ago. I actually was out on the property and I discovered this invasive vine. It was in the paper last week, Mile a Minute it's called. So we actually took a tour with Holly Jones and the management team from the skating club, and we walked the back of the skating club property. So we are on a, positive basis. And even in that meeting a couple of weeks ago, that the general manager, Mr. Zegheim, he did commit long-term to having a relationship that would allow for trail passage, not a trailhead, or he doesn't want to host it, but he will allow passage. So
That's great.
things are going in a good direction.
Good. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you. Thank you, Matt.
Anybody else? Okay. We lose Patty? We lost Patty Starr.
Maybe caller 1.
Oh, okay. I'm interested in the Winter Street Hill overlook. I'm exactly trying to figure out where it's going to go, how high it's going to go. That's a question that somebody asked me. How high is the observation deck going to be?
So if I could, likewise, just a quick Reader's Digest version. So what we have petitioned is, and this again, this is another area that's the hill itself. We're referring to the top of the landfill as Mount Norwood. I'm trying to get some momentum to get people to appreciate and accept that. But Mount Norwood is actually, I have no idea how this occurred, but 1/3 of the hill is managed by the rec department and the Board of Selectmen in their role as park commissioners. And the other 2/3 are managed by the Board of Selectmen and in their role as general government managers. So the petition is to build a low, basically a deck that's probably, as far as I'm concerned, no more than, or as far as we're concerned, no more than like 3 feet off the ground. Contrary to what a lot of people envision, this wouldn't be a tower. It would be, strictly a low. Low is good for a number of different reasons, but basically just a deck that would include. It might have it. The way that the proposal was written up, we would have signage on the platform that would provide geographical and historical and natural guidance as far as the surroundings are concerned. This would be up at the top of the landfill, and it would be in the area that's under the management of the Recreation Department / Board of Selectmen. We are also included. Excuse me. We do have an existing trail and trail map that goes from Father Max and the Savage Center all the way to the Willard School. It parallels Germany Brook. So this addition, or this would represent, and if approved, it would represent an addition to that trail, and we would try to situate a path, kind of an offshoot of that trail that leads to the top of the hill. A number of different reasons. I'm trying to get some volunteer, both material and labor to offset some of these expenses. And I've already solicited the local Boy Scouts and other community groups to help out to whatever extent possible. And now that one more thing. Now that I say that, if I could just circle back to University Ave when we're done with this, I have just one more point about that. So,
Okay, let's,
thank you.
be on the, John Hall?
A few things on this latest thing. The first thing is a suggestion, but it's a strong suggestion. Don't let the word landfill appear anywhere in the application, or the jokes that you get labeled at you are going to kill the project before it's out of its crib. The second, which is kind of related to the image issue, when I was doing studies on solid waste management 40 years ago or so, poorly run landfills, I'm not saying we have one, you get issues of dust, you get issues of odors, you get issues of all kinds of nasties that either are going to impact beyond the border of the landfill or are suspected of threatening that by people who are not as familiar with the state-of-the-art techniques that are used by the people there. So you're going to need, I think, to address those concerns in advance, to be able to talk about what is already being done by the solid waste people, or what you're going to do on this to reduce those dangers to a negligible level. And I'm sure you can. I'm not trying to ask what those are, just that they should be in there and prominent. Lastly, I read the pre-application, and I couldn't tell who it's for, what they're supposed to get from it. It looked like it was a resting stop for people on the trail, but the reference to scenic overlook suggests that that's at most a secondary goal or purpose. So if you could be a bit more clear about who the beneficiaries are, what benefit they're expected to get. Something that makes it sound like a significant number of people are going to get something really nice and valuable for the money that's spent. That would be good too.
Okay, good point. Just in response to the question about odor, and just the fact that I won't use the word landfill, but we all know it is a landfill. The Mount Norwood is capped by a thin membrane, as is the case with any landfill, and there are some very strict restrictions and guidance on what can and cannot be done at the top of the landfill. I did actually, I think it was probably 2.5 to 3 years ago, there was a presentation by the light department who brought in a possible vendor to install a solar array at the top of the landfill. And the question came up as far as penetrating the landfill membrane, but for this construction. Their answer at the time was that the solar array pads would basically sit on top of the membrane and it would not puncture the membrane. Actually, at that meeting back a couple of years ago, I actually brought up the possibility of putting an overlook on top of the hill. They said that they could see no issue with it. They actually, I even asked them, and of course, they were trying to sweeten the pot a little bit, but they did say that they would be willing to partner to build something like this. But the reason I bring that up is A, it's possible. B, it has to be controlled, obviously, but it is possible to put something like we're proposing at the top of the hill without offending the landfill and the membrane gods, if you will. So it is possible to do this. Obviously, if we find an issue with odor or membrane or methane release or anything like that, then this project will be stricken from the record, and we'll just move on to something else. Your point about who specifically benefits is a good one, though.
Let me just add something to on the odor question. Imagine that we're at town meeting presenting the project, and someone comes to the microphone and says, "Look, I know how smelly the stuff is I put into the trash. Are you telling me that it somehow becomes not smelly magically on its way to this magic membrane?" In other words, you're opening yourself up to a lot of sarcastic, unanswerable criticism unless you've anticipated those kind of questions directly in the application.
Okay.
Yeah. One thing on the smell out there, that if you live adjacent to it, it's not the smell, the landfill that bothers you, it's the compost at high tide, right, Patty? Really bad. It's more compost that's up there decaying. The other thing. So my concern is getting from point A to point B, which is point A, the lower trails and up the hill. Having traversed that hill a few times, getting from, say, the Germany Brook Trail, which you referred to, and getting up to the top of the landfill,
Right.
accessibility there, that first initial 20-foot bank to get up. Is this feasibility study going to be including a path to get to the platform, as well as what we can do once we get to the platform and having a ramp and all that, as far as accessibility goes?
Sorry.
I'll let
Okay, thanks. Pat, could you do me a favor? Can you access the QNAP and just pull up that Germany Brook map, please? So it's in, I think you would put it in the folder, maybe?
Yeah.
Please, thank you. So a couple of ways to respond, Peter. And if you could just go to the map side, please. The page 2, yeah. And any chance you can grow that a little bit?
Zoom
Just
in.
focus. Just
Yeah,
focus.
I'm doing it.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
So the blue trail we're talking about?
Yep. So back a year and a half ago, so whether or not we put a platform on top of the mountain or not, it's still a beautiful place. I'm not sure of the committee who has been up there. I'm sure Patty has. I know Matt has. Peter, I know you have as well. Joe, you've been up there too. So, you know, we're all familiar with the scenic outlook, the scenic overlook aspect of this. There's you know, in our research, there's basically no better place in the town as far as a view is concerned, an unobstructed view. Back about a year and a half ago, when Craig Austin and Fran Rush put this map together, this map is, and all the other maps are on the Trails Committee webpage. The green line is a trail that runs along the Germany Brook. Germany Brook forms the border between Westwood and Norwood. So we did envision, again, with or without an overlook at the top of the hill, we did try to invite people to get to the top of the hill. Also included in this application is I guess the creation of a method to get to the top of the hill. And when I say that, you know, obviously, if we're going to build a trail similar to where this blue dashed line is, that it has to be a maintenance-friendly trail. So the landfill is mowed several times a year, and just being a landfill, it has to. There are requirements and limitations that have to be complied with. If you know it, assuming we can move forward, the creation of this basically a side trail leading up to the top of the hill would be approved by all involved interested parties. It would likely not be. It probably wouldn't be as designed here with this blue dash, because frankly that's pretty steep coming up the side. We would probably try to come up in a much less elevated way, maybe a couple of zigzags or you know, back and forths along the way. So that's essentially where it is. Where those set of binoculars are on the map, that's roughly where we're proposing the location be. And that has a very good southwest facing view, basically right down that's still in the Ponset Valley, but you can see Gillette, you can see Medfield, you can see various other places. So I think, Peter, does that answer your question?
Yep.
Okay. Just one more point. One more point. At the bottom of the hill, at the bottom of the dashed blue line, that's actually conservation property, which to Tony's point about the Concom being involved, it's, you know, per se, it's not where we're proposing. This is not conservation property, but it connects up to conservation property. So that's why they're involved. Thank you.
Joe Sheehan? Joe Sheehan?
Yep. I just had a question. I thought that you say that you're going to be facing a particular direction. Wouldn't it be wise to be able to see anywhere? Is it going to be how's that deck going to look?
If we were to looking towards Winter Street is north. I'll say that's like northeast direction. It might not be exactly, but the tree line, with very few exceptions, the tree line blocks out any view. You can see there's a couple of church towers that you can see in Westwood on 109, but essentially that's about all that you can see, which is as opposed to the southeasterly or southwesterly direction where it's a wide open unobstructed view. So that's, you know, the platform itself would be kind of non-denominational in that non-directional, in that you could, you could turn 360 degrees and, you could see the water tower, you could see the cemetery, you could see the high school, you could see those church towers in Westwood, but you couldn't see much more in that Westwood center direction. So that's why we've tried to we've proposed the orientation of the platform primarily to face in that southwestern direction.
Thank you. You'll be able to see anywhere, but that's the featured view.
Right.
And the reason there's a good view that way is because the cemetery is there and the high school's there and it's knocked all the trees down.
Yeah. Right.
And you get to see the dump. The remainder of.
Well, you are on top of the dump.
We're not going to use that word.
All right.
Right.
Okay. Anything else on Winter Street Hill Overlook? Okay.
There isn't, but if I could, Mr. Chair, just 20 seconds, if I can go back to University Ave for a second. There is such a thing. We actually the town applied for a grant from the state. It's called the Mass Trails Grant. We had applied for the grant back in February for a different purpose, but we did not receive the grant. This is a grant that is, there is an annual grant application period, and the grant deadline is February 1st. So Paul Halkiotis, Holly Jones, Pat, put their heads together and they said that the University Ave feasibility study would be a good project to apply to the state for. So we'll know before May, hopefully we'll know before May if that project will be funded by the state, by that Mass Trails grant. So obviously if that, the timing is roughly parallel. But obviously if the state is going to fund that project, then that makes the CPA application null and void. So I just wanted to put that out there, that we are working on an alternate source of funds for that project.
Yeah, there's no guarantee we'll get 100% funding from the state though.
Exactly,
So
exactly, right.
it might be matching fund, it might not be 50-50, it might be 80-20 or something like that. We can use
Right.
the CPA money as the match and maybe help us get the grant because we've got some ownership in it ourselves to help us get grants. We have matching funds of some sort.
Okay. Thank you all. I appreciate it. Thank you.
As far as Pat kind of explained the interpretive signage, does anybody have any questions or anything about that? Because it might not go forward or may or may not. Tony?
Yeah, just to comment on the Mount Norwood, which I love that name. One of my comments about that, I can't recall if it was in the paperwork, is that area is the highest geographical elevation location in Norwood. I believe what used to be the high school, but isn't that the highest elevation in Norwood? And
Natural elevation.
natural elevation, and if that's the case, I think that's, a valid point to have in the application. And if in fact that's true, then the view from that point is intrinsically valuable just in its location. I know I have climbed the spiral stairs up at the Carillon Tower, and the view even just from the tower was breathtaking on a clear summer night. So to be able to have a vantage, a public viewpoint where one does not have to climb spiral stairs would be very nice. And I just want to compliment the Trails Committee. I think they're doing a fabulous job. And I'm also glad to hear that it would not preclude the town if they ever wanted to move forward with a solar array at the landfill, because I had heard that conversation before as well. So I just wanted to add that point, that I just think the view in and of itself is intrinsically valuable for anyone who would like to take advantage of it, because I can't think of any other place in town where you can enjoy that. It's not dissimilar to the top of Blue Hills. I've been to the observation at the top of Blue Hills. It's stunning. So for Norwood to have a place to enjoy a view would be lovely. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
John Hall, did you have something to add?
Yes, on the signage project.
Sure.
I don't have a position on the process and the timing issues that Pat laid out, but I love the project. It looks very similar in spirit to something that a friend of mine did down in Chatham a few years ago that I had mentioned to this body in an earlier meeting. And I think it's a wonderful way of increasing the accessibility of interesting historic information to anyone who happens to be walking around the town. So I'm hoping we can make this work. Glad to see it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I remember we had that conversation, John, last year about your friend in Chatham. And it's an idea that we kind of toyed with for, I feel like 2 years now. I know last year I tried to do the historic signs for for private dwellings. And that kind of fell flat when I talked to Stuart Stagnor. So I'm hoping this one, I feel like there's more evidence of its publicly accessible location. I think it falls more in line. There's a lot more evidence of towns that have done something similar, that have created historical interpretive signage. So I think it falls in line of something that's doable. As I mentioned before, I threw it together at the end of last week, and that's not how we want to do these things. And so I'm fully aware of if we need to hold off until next year's fall, if that is the feeling of the body, that's one thing, because there is a lot of information that I need to get and need to work with, the town's historical experts, I guess, if you will, to put that back catalog of information together.
Pat, one thing to point out at the high school, when we did the new school, along the main corridor that goes across from the office down to the gym, there are some commemorative signs for the old schools that have been around Norwood. You might look at that as a style for it, because they're like about 2x3 plaque, 2 foot, 2 feet high, 3 feet wide.
Yeah.
Of the Beacon Street School, I think, and a few others. So it's along the main hallway. There's about half dozen signs of some,
Yeah.
of something.
I think a lot of this would just come from putting this more towards a working group or some variation of the historical commission, 150th anniversary committee. I'd like to kind of put it into their, kind of give that to them to kind of think about how they want the signs to look. In my brain, I'm thinking of something that's fairly small, that's both utilitarian and affordable, but also can be easily recognizable. Thinking of like an 8.5 by 11 or something like that you can mount to a building that is, within, it's up to your eye level and something that you can access fairly easily, but it's also not taking too much space. So it's kind of innocuous. It's out of the way. But like I said, that would probably come from working with some sort of group to figure out the design. But I'll take a look at those, Peter. That sounds interesting.
Joe Shin.
Perhaps this is a bit early, but how many of these signs would you expect? Is that something to be explored?
I think it's to be explored. So in Stoughton, they had about 20, but Stoughton's project's a lot. When I mean interpretive signage, their project's probably a little different than ours. Sometimes you see interpretive signs on trails, for example, and they'll have a lot more detail. I'm thinking of something that's, and again, this could be the process of working with a committee, but I'm thinking of something that it has a design that's recognizable, but then kind of contains its information through either a QR code or some sort of code of the like, where you can basically look up that information digitally. That way, it's kind of like, you'd be walking around town and you see a building that has that small sign, has that code. You could, bring out your iPhone, take a look, and then bring up, we have all those pictures at Town Hall from from the 1800s of a couple locations. And it's kind of a cool idea to, I guess, in a more of a practical and an affordable way, have those pictures available to the public, while they're out and see those buildings in real life. So, there's like one where it's like at the corner of Railroad in Washington, where it's like, maybe we if we put a plaque there on one of those buildings, you could bring up your iPhone, zoom in on the QR code, and it'll bring up an article as well as pictures about what was there, what that area used to look like 100, 150 years ago.
Well, the old cemetery volunteers did that at certain graves at the cemetery. So
Yeah, I talked about it briefly with Patty
Grove.
Fanning in an email. So I think I know.
Yeah, John Grove is really into that. He was the one that was working on that the most. John Hall?
You sparked a thought on timing. It would be really cool to be able to roll this out midway in our sesquicentennial celebration. And if Patty Fanning and the other historical types on the 150th committee knew it was coming, they could probably work it into things like tours and other sorts of things. I'm also thinking that if you got real ambitious, the stuff that you access digitally could include things like historic postcards, pictures of the same scene at a much earlier time. There are all kinds of ways to turn this into a real history lesson and a lot of fun.
Yeah, I completely agree. I'm thinking of it as well, it could be something obviously that's permanent, but it falls in line with the 150th anniversary, and that's part of the reason why I kind of put it forward a little late. Was, in my head I was like, we can't wait another year on if we want to do something like this. 2022 coming up, so we want to get going. We got to get going early.
Yeah, well, Patty Fanning and John Grove have both written books about Norwood, Norwood's history, so they both have very knowledgeable of what's going on, what's taking place. Plus they have in the archives. Joe Sheehan?
Just, I know the time is of the essence on this. Is there any way we could move it forward this time coming up, or is it a problem? I mean, if we could waive something, I don't know if we can. I know that you said you may have put this in late.
Yeah, I mean,
put it on time.
It's a
so
placeholder.
we worked on the pre-application, and to be perfectly honest, I didn't meet the pre-application, and so I want to hold myself accountable to that. It's obviously up to the committee how they see fit. I also think that if we spend the winter and part of the summer working on the background in terms of what we want the design to look like and what we want, and building the catalog, that's just hours. That's really not something that we need to pay for. But the actual purchase and mounting of the signs, that's something that is kind of like the end of the actual would be of the entire project. So I mean, the money, if we got into a place where it could be appropriated for the May annual town meeting, that'd be great. At the same time, it's understandable if it would have to wait till next year's fall special, and I think it would still line up all right with the 150th anniversary. But
We'll keep it. We can talk about, if it comes down to, if we don't have enough information to act on it, when we get down to the public meeting time, we'll have to make a decision then. I mean, right now, we can just keep it as a placeholder right now, and we can figure out if, we get somebody that wants to buy into it and run with it too. So,
It's a great idea.
yeah. Nice. It's a good idea, Pat. Thank you. So that takes care of the applications and CPA business and updates and status of the approved projects. I know we have some information coming forward on the Carillons. I heard that the bid came back. My understanding of the bid came back as for the foundry work. There's two parts of the bid, foundry work and painting. The foundry work was, going and working on the Carillon bells itself, came back at 205,000. So that's under the 215 that we had allotted for it. But the painting of the tower, that is still being negotiated. I mean, the bid was open to 5 bidders, and the range was like 100,000 to 250,000 is the range for the 5 bids. So I think Kathy Connie's working with whoever is the most qualified bidder to see if they can actually hold their pricing until we meet in January and approve. I think we're going to get a supplemental request for whatever amount of money that's going to be, say roughly maybe 125,000 additional for painting the clock tower. So as far as that goes, so there will be something coming, but we don't know specifics. But that's the general feeling. What the request is going to be is going to be a supplemental request for the painting part of the project. So that's the update as far as the Caroline goes. I haven't heard anything about lower voltage, except that the fixtures for the classroom are put in, those benches, and they've been in place, but that's out of the, nothing's been done. And Travis's last date on that was the ramp won't be done until the spring. It'll be now.
Yeah.
So, the pad for the El Cebeso property across the street from Tony's house, the pad's still there, but there's no structure yet, as far as I understand. But that structure have we paid for the structure, or have they put it, Pat?
Yep. So we basically have kind of have the agreement with the vendor. I processed the invoice for the structure. I believe it's on hold now just until it comes in. And then I believe the facilities department is actually the department in-house that will be constructing it. So I have kind of no real updates other than we got it purchased. It's coming in. Obviously, with it getting colder right now, I'm not sure if they're just gonna, get it in and probably wait until April or whatnot. A little disappointed we couldn't get it ready for the fall, but at the same time, I think it came in under budget actually, and it's it's going to look great when it's all said and done. I think right now we're just waiting for it to come in and then take it from there on when it will get assembled.
Okay. Any other?
What about the chapel closeout?
Joe Grilly. Anything?
I did mention this at our last meeting. I had sent an email to Ted Callahan, and I copied Linda Clarkin on the email, just asking for an update. The last time we heard anything was all the way back in February, and to the best of my knowledge, the PBCC has either not met at all, or they're just meeting on a very rare basis over the course of the summer. So my assumption, in fact, when I sent the email, I sent Ted back his response back from February just to let him know what he said then, and I have not heard anything back from them yet. So as far as I know, it's still open, but I don't know that for sure.
Yeah.
That's as far as approved projects go, and we have the 4 in limbo. But we'll talk about those. I mean, hopefully, if it's January, I don't think we should need to go back and refresh the bids, but hopefully it doesn't go past January. But we don't know the date yet, so to be determined. Anything on financial review as far as, well, the big news was we got 200,000 from a state match. So,
Yep.
So we're just adding to that money and not spending a dime of it.
Hey, not that bad.
What a bank.
Yeah, that was obviously, nothing has really changed from, what's been in our accounts since then, except the 200,000 from the state. So that's kind of a small result so far of the legislation that was passed, I believe, a year ago that impacted the registry of deeds rates. That helps us out. So hopefully it goes up some more. Obviously, the downside is, still more and more towns are joining the CPA. So that is once it's up, it's still kind of going down again, which, not bad. It's not a bad thing. I know everyone wants to get involved with it, but it definitely is a nice boost from, I think, what we have, 11% the year before. So now we're up to 28.6. So it was good.
Okay.
All right. Yeah. So last time we met, not to put this guy on the spot, but last time we met, we briefly introduced our recording secretary, John. I just wanted to bring John up again, just to kind of, if any questions that the committee has for John. Obviously, I mentioned John works for the town of Westwood in their school department. I don't know, John, not to put you on the spot. I don't know if you want to just give a brief overview of your background and.
I've spent my entire career for the Westwood schools, and for the last 8 have been working out of the superintendent's office. So at the moment, I work with the school committee and the school building committee and their work.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
We now have 2 Johns, 2 Joes, and 2 Pats. So Matt and Tony are going to recruit some similarly named people to fill in any slots we open up.
Yep.
But so we won't have to hack some memory as far as names go.
I also wanted to use this time. It wasn't necessarily on the agenda, but she couldn't join us tonight because Conservation Commission is meeting at the same time as us. But Catherine Walsh has been appointed from the Conservation Commission as their representative to the CPC. I haven't met her yet, but talking to Holly, it sounds like she's enthusiastic about joining. So hopefully in December, obviously, I think we'll be back on our regular meeting schedule of every other but the second Wednesday of the month, which will work all right for Concom. So hopefully she'll be able to join us then. For the other vacant position, John Apria's position, I haven't heard anything yet from Tony Mizuko, or whether or not that's Board of Selectmen have appointed anyone for that position yet. I don't know if Matt, if you guys discussed it at all, but
Not really, Pat, but I imagine that on Tuesday night, when he gives his recommendations on the projects, maybe we can nudge him to give up some information too. So.
Okay. I'll talk to him too. We talked about it briefly, but I'm not sure if
I think there are a couple people who are interested, which is great. So.
Yep.
Could you clarify something, Pat? I would have thought that if they did it the way they've done it before, they have to put out an appeal to people and find out who is interested in joining as an at-large member, and screen the one they choose based on their ability, interest, willingness to be the new treasurer. It's not quite as quick and direct as you made it sound.
I thought Joe was taking over as the new treasurer.
Joe is
Can we
until
establish that?
waiting. Well, he is
sorry.
interim. He's got
I'm
the
sorry,
title interim. He's got the title interim right now.
I'm sorry, which Joe are you referring to?
Really?
Joe Grilly has the title interim right now. So,
I think for the position, if we want to do it this way, I would say we just bring on the person, not so much to fill over the treasurer role, but just a new person, and then we can just re-elect treasurer out of, we'll have all 9 people. We'll have the Concom member, we'll have the new at-large member, whoever that is, and then we can have the election for treasurer. I don't think they need to come in filling the treasurer role, though.
yeah, it was never really it just happened that originally it was Bob Thornton, who had a very extensive accounting background, that took over as treasurer, but, and John Apria had an accounting background. So he just worked with, skills of the committee members. So we'll
And
see.
who else do we know who has an accounting background?
We do know somebody that's on the committee right now. Careful. All trails lead to him, but as far as that goes, so anything else? Any other
No, but that's it. Obviously, I'll probably let you all know in an email when we hear a date. If we find out a date before our next meeting in December of when the future special will be. Yeah, like you, we haven't. I think it's still kind of fresh. I'm not sure if if the date is being thought of or anything like that. And also for the Carillon, I know the visit, I think I mentioned earlier, from Ben Sunderland, that was delayed. Talking to Bernie Cooper, I think we're still kind of, with everything going on right now, I don't know when Ben Sunderland's going to meet. He was supposed to meet in November. I think that is looking unlikely now. I don't know if that's a result of his schedule, the pandemic, both. But it's to be determined, I guess, when he'll be available again. And obviously, him showing up impacts a few things. Obviously, whether we have a kind of an emergency article for the Carillon, it impacts the fire bell project. So I'll keep you informed on whether we have a time frame for when Mr. Sunderland is going to be up in Norwood. But
Okay, just maybe circling back to the applications that we just received. Over the next month, everybody should go through it and just make sure they have all the questions that they want answered. We need to go back to the applicant, make sure these things get addressed going forward, because we probably, usually in January, we start inviting the applicants in to go over their projects, and you can discuss it then, but we usually try to get some of the questions that we have to them ahead of time, so we're not wasting a we're not going to be doing face-to-face, but a Zoom-to-Zoom meeting as far as getting these things resolved, any questions, so we can move forward with them. So as far as that goes, so we want to make sure if you have any questions, concerns. Pat, did you make notes? Oh, I'm sorry, that would be John's job, right? As far as any questions that were addressed for any of the applications tonight?
yeah, we have the recording, and I know John obviously is recording minutes, so we can go back over that and make note of those questions that are brought up.
Yeah. So, but if you have any, if you had something you didn't think of during the meeting here, submit them to Pat, and Pat will, we'll let you out and send them back to the applicants to make sure they get answered, by the January, so we can start getting them in to talk about getting them
Do we want to set?
get some face time with them, I guess.
Mr. Chairman, do we want to set kind of like a timeline for ourselves of, well, actually, we are still down 2 members, so I don't know if we want to wait until they join us, but if we want to try to set some sort of time frame for until our December meeting, kind of start compiling questions and use that as a time frame to get those questions to me, then I can put those into the list, similar that we've done the previous 2 years, and then get those lists of questions out to applicants for the January meeting.
Yeah,
So December's our deadline, and then January I provide it to the applicant.
I think December what we'll do is talk about the timeline as far as meetings go, because usually in January, February, we had the second meeting each month. So it's usually the second and the fourth Wednesdays of the month, because that doesn't compete with Conservation Commission. So we might go adapt that schedule for January and February, and we'll see. And I think we pencil in a March one in case March might be the public hearing as far as going back on that. But we'll talk about that in December, and we'll definitely put that on the agenda as far as timeline for future meetings and scheduling applicants. As far as that goes, we got, Joe Greeley be handling it all again. It'll be a solo show for Joe. So as far as that goes. All right. Anything else from the body? Other than that, I think we're ready to go.
If I could, Mr. Chair, just to, again, 20 seconds, I appreciate it. I just want to, just a quick piece of feedback on the Saint Street lot that the committee voted in favor of. We actually had a trail and property cleanup this past Saturday. And I wanted to thank Patty specifically for joining us, but we had about 25 people join us for that cleanup. And we took out, 30 bags of trash, 7 tires, part of an engine block, some furniture, all kinds of things. And I just wanted to thank the body and just to confirm that we are taking care of the resource that the committee has purchased a couple of years, 2 years ago. So we like to think it's in good hands. But thank you.
Thank you, Joe. That was a huge effort done by you guys. And kind of on that same note, I think we got a little sidetracked, kind of preparing for town meeting. But I know Holly has been working on kind of our RFP, basically for the preliminary trail design for the Saint lot. So I know that's another project that we're probably going to discuss on Friday. I think we have a meeting planned, Holly, myself, and Paul, and we'll maybe talk about what is our next steps with the Saint lot in terms of getting that preliminary design out to bid and getting a consultant in. And so that's something we definitely don't want to lose track of.
Yeah, because we have about 40,000 available for that study, right?
Yeah, I think that's what we're estimating for it.
Yeah. Very good. Hey, thanks, Joe, for bringing that up. So, it's kind of like one of those things that we bought the land and I forgot about the design part to integrate the trails. All right. Well, I guess that's it. Take a motion to adjourn.
Move we adjourn.
All right. Got a John Hall and a Joe second, Joe Greeley second. Roll call. Start with Joe Sheehan to adjourn.
Aye.
John Hall,
Aye.
Tony Esco,
Aye.
Matt Lane,
Aye.
Joe Greeley,
Aye.
Eddie Starr. Aye. Chair votes yes, and it's unanimous. And thank you all, and have a great night.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Be well.
Hey,
Happy
Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving. All right.
Thank you. Thanks.